In a world where supplement, overpromise, and underdeliver, I'm glad to inform you that two of the most accessible on this planet may be helping your longevity cause. We're talking, in some cases, even turning back your cellular clock by a matter of years. Yes, years, at least according to the metrics from these two research teams who just published new groundbreaking studies that we're going to review today. Studies which also may make you get up and sprint to your supplement cabinet to see if you have vitamin D and omega-3s on tap. Because this data is suggesting that these two supplemental juggernauts may not just be an overall health play, but one which alters the rate at which we age as well. We're talking telomeres, DNA methylation, aging clocks, and a whole lot more hashed out in human clinical trial form. Some data you're not going to want to miss. Let's go. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Alright, let's start with the vital breakthrough from this vital study, short for vitamin D and omega-3 trial. And I would tell you how they got to the abbreviation vital, but it's so absurd that it would take a whole nother video to explain, so we'll keep moving. This trial followed 25,000 adults for 3 years. Half instructed to take 2,000 international units of vitamin D daily, with the other half taking a placebo, making it one of the largest aging studies ever conducted. And what they found will make you think twice about that vitamin D4 bones perception you still have from childhood. Here, researchers looked at a biological component called telomeres, which are essentially caps at the end of your chromosomes that protect your most important biological asset, your code of life, DNA. And if you want a real-life analogy, just less significant, think of these like the plastic tips at the end of your shoelaces, basically regulating the longevity of the shoelace itself. Because come on, when they go, tying your shoes gets pretty messy. That's why you just gotta always leave them tied. Boom, problem solved. But we digress. And the research suggests that this is kinda what happens with telomeres and aging. But instead, it's every time your cells divide, these telomeres get shorter. And the shorter they get, the more prone your DNA is to damage, and thus accelerated aging. Now, that's the theory, and there's quite a bit of controversy around the significance of telomeres and their shortening as of late, so the jury's still out. But what we do know is that they play an important biological role. Now, here's where things start getting a little wild. The people taking 2,000 IU of vitamin D daily had their telomere shrink by 140 base pairs less than the placebo group, who were unknowingly taking a fake vitamin D supplement each day. And if you're wondering if 140 base pairs is significant, or what it even means, the analysis concluded that vitamin D supplementation over this time period was associated with nearly a 3-year reduction in biological age. Yeah, 3 whole years. Crazy. I know. That is, of course, if you believe telomeres are a good assay for biological aging, which, like I mentioned, is kind of a hot debate right now. Either way, it is pretty wild to see that type of significant difference in a large-scale, multi-year, randomized controlled aging study, because there ain't too many of those out there. However, since we're on that topic, let's go to study number 2. Yeah, there's more. Because while the VITAL study was looking at telomeres, another team of researchers were diving deeper into a more accepted yet still evolving way to measure biological age: DNA methylation clocks. And if you want the full breakdown to what exactly these are, check out this previous breakdown here. But essentially, they're like molecular stopwatches that use algorithms to estimate how fast your body is aging compared to the average person your age. So this Do Health trial, gotta love the abbreviations, looked at 777 healthy adults over 70. Lot of sevens. And measured their biological age using 4 different DNA methylation clocks over the course of 3 years after participants were put on either a omega-3, vitamin D, light exercise, or combination protocol, finding that one of those really stood out. Well, Two, but we'll talk about it. First, observing that the omega-3 supplementation alone slowed down 3 of the 4 aging clocks, showing significant anti-aging effects from just 1 daily gram. Effects that equated to slowing biological aging between 3 and 4 months over 3 years, reducing the rate of infection by 13% and the rate of falls by 10%. Pretty cool. But here's where things got more interesting. When the omega-3 supplement was combined with vitamin D and light exercise, aka the combination protocol, the anti-aging effects were enhanced. Essentially, each intervention stacked on top of each other formed a geroprotective superstack. Geroprotective meaning a protocol which makes you age more gracefully, or in some cases, in reverse. This combined treatment showed a significant additive benefit on reducing pre-frailty by 39% and incidence of invasive cancer by 61%, which, taking into account that these are 70-plus-year-olds, ain't too shabby. And if you were wondering, let's talk about what may be going on here under the hood before we get to ways you can improve your current protocol. Starting with vitamin D, which, like I mentioned before, most people think of as the bone vitamin. But the reality is, this vitamin acts much more like a hormone, as there are vitamin D receptors found in virtually every cell in the body, meaning its reach rivals the likes of molecules like glucose, the energy of life. Yeah. And here's why vitamin D is fascinating when it comes to aging. It appears to activate enzymes that help maintain telomere length, specifically one called telomerase, which some in the field have analogized to being our biological fountain of youth. Again, controversial, but essentially this enzyme helps rebuild those protective chromosome caps. And as with many of our youthful biological processes, telomerase activity has been observed to naturally decline as we age. So anything that we can do to put it in a position to do its thing is an investment probably worth making. Now, for omega-3s, the Do Health study found that they specifically affected something called DNA methylation patterns, which are like genetic switches that turn genes on and off. And as we age, these switches start getting stuck, unable to respond to what the body needs, setting the stage for cellular dysfunction, chronic inflammation, and a loss of our ability to, well, regenerate ourselves. In other words, accelerated aging. But omega-3s have been observed to help restore proper methylation patterns, particularly in genes related to inflammation and cellular repair. And if you've been around these longevity parts, you know very well why situations like chronic inflammation are such a big deal. Because it is a slow burning fire that destroys your cellular function and tissue over time. So much so that it has its very own aging catchphrase, inflammaging, which we've covered ad nauseum in videos such as this one, making one of the most compelling attributes to both of these supplements the fact that they both have been observed to be potent anti-inflammatory agents, as vitamin D helps regulate the immune system, preventing it from going haywire and creating a chronic inflammatory state, while omega-3s are precursors for specialized pro-resolving mediators, which happen to be molecules that, wouldn't you know it, actively resolve inflammation. And when you combine them, you get what researchers observed in the Do Health study, a synergistic effect that's more powerful than either supplement alone, which makes the observation from that study that people with lower baseline levels of omega-3 got an even bigger anti-aging benefit from the supplement, a compelling reason to reassess your current situation, especially if you're not eating fatty fish, nuts, seeds, and grass-fed meats regularly, which is the majority of the population. So, speaking of things you can do, let's now talk about some tactical steps to think about to improve your current longevity protocol, with the disclaimer, of course, that the better consistent habits that you have, the less likely Any supplement will dramatically change your day to day. I mean, they call them supplements for a reason. They're not meant to replace things that you should be doing daily. Things like eating real whole foods, prioritizing high quality circadian aligned sleep, moving that ass, getting out in nature, avoiding toxins, and proactively managing your stress. Instead, they're meant to be additive, to balance a deficiency. But they most certainly are not magic. You gotta do the healthy stuff too. There's your truth bomb for the day. Anyway, the truly promising things about these studies were that the protocols were very doable with very doable doses. The key variables being consistency and duration, with of course the combination alongside other healthy habits driving the best results. So remember that as we dive into these specifics. First, the dosage. Depending on the diet, the average person would probably benefit from anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000 international units of vitamin D daily, along with 1 to 2 grams of omega-3s with a good mix of both EPA and DHA. However, the omega-3s is something that you can probably skip if you are an avid fish eater. And lastly, an honorable but probably most important mention, 30 to 60 minutes of moderately intense exercise. Now, the best way to determine your ideal daily dose is to measure and monitor. And that's done by making these nutrients part of your frequent testing. Vitamin D can be assessed with a simple blood test with an ideal target around 50 to 80 nanograms per milliliter, and omega-3s can be tested via home kits. But again, simply making it a focus to eat some fatty wild fish, nuts, seeds, and grass-fed meats weekly while avoiding those ultra-processed junk foods will likely do the trick for your omega-3s. And to round out the testing, adding high-sensitivity C-reactive protein to gauge the inflammation levels is a good idea too. And while you're locking in your protocol, know that locking in timing and context is valuable too. Specifically taking vitamin D with fat for better absorption and earlier in the day because it can be biologically stimulating. And with omega-3s, it's all about quality. As rancid fish oil can be health detracting and inflammation inducing. So do your due diligence, opting for reputable brands with high standards and great reviews. And again, remember, these studies followed people being consistent for years. So overnight miracles aren't a thing. But the good news is, swaying your odds through owning your health certainly is. A strategy which also allows you to reap the benefits of feeling effing awesome along the way. And I mean, come on. What more could you ask for than that? Never in human history has a population been so well equipped to feel effing awesome like we are today. So grab the longevity by the horns already. And as always, I'd love to hear what you got going on when it comes to vitamin D and omega-3s, and also if you've ever dabbled with getting your biological age tested. So please, drop your alpha in the comments below and let's get better together. Well, I guess we should rephrase that to let's get less old faster together. Yeah, much better ring to it.